Donald Trump says there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. The U.S. president also says he should have a say in who the next leader will be. Trump told NBC News he has some names in mind, but didn't want to clarify who he wants to see in charge. He says the current regime needs to be completely wiped out before a, quote, acceptable leadership is ushered in. So, how do U.S. objectives with Iran square with international law? Our next guest can help discuss whether Trump can legally determine the leadership of foreign countries. Matthias Goldmann is a professor of international law at EBS University. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Artie.
Now,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, we're very happy to have you join us on this. So Trump stated yesterday that the U.S. wanted a role in choosing Iran's next leader. Does he have the power to be making such a statement or to be following through to determine such a thing like the leader of a foreign nation?
No, he doesn't. Let me get this quite clear, Artie. There is a rule in international law which is called the right to self-determination. And it means that it is up to a people to choose their leadership and to choose their political structure. It is not upon a foreign government. Even in case when you occupy a foreign country, like after a war, when you have successfully led a war and occupy it, you can only organize the transitional phase, but everything that comes after it is up to the people to determine themselves. So no, Trump does not have a right to determine the Iranian leadership.
And when we're talking about the operation that was executed as well, this joint operation between Israel and the United States as well, does that align with international law?
No, it doesn't. No, it's a clear violation of the prohibition to use military force in international relations. And all the justifications that have been put forward by the US government or the Israeli government, which are changing, every day and sometimes every hour we get a new justification. All of those don't work. There has been no risk of an immediate attack by Iran. And also you can't attack another country even if they are violating the human rights of their own peoples. So nothing of this works. It's an illegal attack.
Now, Matthias, we know that the U.S. president has referenced what happened in Venezuela and saying that perhaps a similar situation is what will unfold when it comes to selecting a leader in Iran. So when we look at how things unfolded in that country, in Venezuela, there too, was there any alignment with international law, given the situation, again, as you've outlined, with how people in that country were feeling and accusations surrounding drug operations as well?
So first of all, I think that Venezuela and Iran are hard to compare because Venezuela by no means has the same military standing as has Iran. So we're in a completely different situation here. Secondly, what happened in Venezuela was not quite that Trump picked a leader. Rather, someone came to power in Venezuela after Maduro was ousted, was basically kidnapped by the United States. And then the US sought an arrangement with that new government. That is very different from picking a leader. They actually didn't pick the leader, but they sought an arrangement with the leader that was picked by the regime in Venezuela, as illegitimate as this regime might be.
So when we're talking about the situations as they continue to unfold, the world is looking on. As you've stated, there have been a lot of contradictions or conflicts with international law here and what is being carried out. So if that is in fact the case, that there are these violations, why is nothing being done about that?
Well, first of all, who should do something about it? It's very difficult to enforce international law and especially the prohibition of the use of force against the great powers. They've always had, sort of a free right or they've been at liberty to what extent they respect international law. However, there might be consequences, even for the United States. So some states have already reconsidered their relationship. If you violate rules, like fundamental rules of international law, states are going to reconsider to what extent they can cooperate with you. How is the US going to be a faithful and a trustworthy negotiating partner for any other country? And how is it going to cooperate on in respect of military with other countries? We see that, for example, Spain has already prohibited the US from using the military bases it has there for the attack on Iran. And the reason they've prohibited it is that it's an illegal attack. Now, everything is moving to Germany, and I know there are discussions here in Germany to what extent we can allow the US to use its military bases, especially the crucially important Ramstein military base, not far from here actually, for operations like the one they're conducting in Iran. There are requirements by our constitution which say, if you launch an illegal attack, our constitution doesn't allow it. So there can be consequences of on the part of international law, and this is how international law can be enforced. The US will lose in reputation, and it will lose partners around the world if it continues as it does. So it's not completely useless.
Matthias, I have many more questions, but unfortunately we've got to leave our conversation there. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your insights. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Arti. It was my pleasure.
That was Matthias Goldmann. He is a professor of international law joining us from EBS University. Thank you.